Hi, it's Margaret. Today I am going to show you my extra lazy way of taking care of my dahlia tubers that are in the ground. And the ones that I'm going to take care of today are actually dahlias that I grew from seed. So I took the seed, I got a little seedling from it in the spring. Those came outside, they grew all season, and now I am going to be digging up those tubers, and because they do form tubers even though you grew them from a seed, and then I will be storing them over the winter and bringing them back out next year. And I apologize for the wind. It has been ridiculously cold lately, in around, I don't know what the Fahrenheit is, but around 2 degrees. And this is actually the first day when it's a little bit warmer, not that much warmer, but it's, I think, 8 degrees, 9 degrees, something like that. Now, the thing with growing dahlias from seed is you don't really know what you're going to get, specifically when it comes to color. So the packets that you will get will be a mix of different colors. What they will tell you is the type of dahlia you'll get. So for example, I grew one that was a cactus mix. So those are the ones where the petals are really skinny. And then I also grew some that were just kind of smaller collarette type dahlias. And what I did during the summer is I essentially went around to the ones that I really, really liked, and I tagged them so that later on I would know, well, these are the ones I want to save. If I don't want to save them, they will just stay in the ground and essentially die over the winter in our climate because it's much too cold here for them to winter over in the ground. So when I went around and did the tags on all the dahlias, I also took a photograph of the dahlias so that I would know for next year what that particular one looks like. And right now, when I label the dahlias, I'm going to use that, I don't know what you call it, it's that plastic tape type of thing to label the dahlias. But I'm also going to make a note on the tag how tall the dahlia got, because some of them are tiny. They're only like 3 feet tall. I think grew a couple of dwarf mixes, and other ones are quite tall, topping out at maybe 6 feet. So of course I'm going to want to know that when I plant them next year. And what I'll do is, as I am digging up the dahlias, I will pop on the screen the photos of the ones that I am saving that I'm digging up this year. So these here are the dahlias that I will be digging up. Not all of them, as I said. I tagged the ones that I did want to get. And you'll see here, for example, this little guy has a tag here. It says B. So I'll know when I go look at my photos, the ones that are labeled B, that's what these guys are. And you can see this is a very short one, right? This one is about maybe, I don't know, just over 2 feet tall maybe. And then here I have another one, much taller one. This one I labeled C. These are the ones I put on either side of the gate, and I actually will be readjusting this next year. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these next year, but I put them a little too close to the gate, and I was always bumping into them as I was coming in and out. So I will be doing something different on that. So here's another one here that I labeled. This is a pretty tall one as well. And then there were a couple of dwarf varieties in the beds that I'll also be saving. And let me go show you those. So here are some dwarf varieties. They were from a Figaro mix, I see there. And these are maybe just over a foot tall, really. They're really tiny. I mean, this one I don't think even reaches a foot tall. But from the looks of it, I am not saving this one or this one. However, I am saving this guy here. And I do have my little tag down there for that one. And there's also one over there that I'm saving as well. Okay, I am going to start digging now. I have my bucket here, and that's where I'm going to put the tubers. I also have the tape here that I'm using and a marker as well, because as soon as I lift these out of the ground, I do want to tag them. Otherwise, they're just going to get all mixed up. And I want to remember to make a note of that height. Sometimes I forget, and then I'm left guessing that the following year. So when it comes to digging these guys up, I much prefer using a garden fork rather than using a shovel. I find it's just easier to get into the ground, but as well, if I do end up hitting a tuber, I feel that the fork will cause less damage. One thing I didn't mention is that these guys were actually killed by frost about 2.5 weeks ago, and I leave them in the ground for about 2 weeks in order for the tubers to kind of get a bit of a tougher skin, and that will really help them to store a lot better. If you basically dug them up as soon as they died back, chances are they wouldn't store that well. So I'm going to go about 6 inches or so out. These are probably not going to be very large tubers at all, but I don't want to hit any of them. So I'm thinking 6 inches should be a good amount of distance. So here, I'm going to cut it back so that I have maybe, I don't know, 3-4 inches of stem or so, like that. And let's see what we have here. This is E. So we'll see what we have. Oh, wow. That is a really good sized tuber. Take some of that soil away. Wow, this is actually really, really impressive. I mean, this is from seed. So now I am going to go, I think in this area by the gate, there are, I think 3 or 4 that I'm lifting in this area. Sometimes it's hard to be selective when you're digging these things up because all of them are beautiful. You want to save all of them, but there's only so much room I have in my coal cellar, right? So I'm just going to dig them up. I'm brushing any big clumps of soil that they have on them, but otherwise this is what it's going to look like. I'm just going to put a tag on it now. So you know what? Let me do that right now. So this one, I'm just going to put down that this was E. And this one was about 5 feet tall, I would say. So that's what I have here on my tag. I'm going to take a good chunk of it so that I can wrap it around. And I'm just going to cut it. And I am going to loosely actually put it on the tuber so that it can't get off. I'm sure if I put it around the stem, it would be fine, but I kind of get paranoid that when they're squishing around in there, they could easily just slide off the stem. And I'm just going to leave it like this. So I don't tie a knot or anything on it. I just very loosely do one kind of, I don't know, tie, I guess. And that's it. Very loose, right? But not loose enough it's going to fly right off. That's why I like leaving those ends pretty big. And that's that for that one. So that's going to go in my bucket here. And now I'm going to continue with the rest of them. So these here that are left, I am not going to be pulling up. So for those, just to clean up this area, I am basically, oh, these are tough. I'm going to be cutting, you know what? This is a super tough stem. I'm actually going to grab my loppers and I'll be cutting those right off at the ground level. Now I'm just going to smooth this area out so it's all ready for next year. So we're all done here. So now I'm going to go over to the beds and do those little dwarf varieties. Okay, so these guys, I'll just pull them up. I'm not planning on saving these, but yeah, see? You got your tubers. Beautiful. I was a little bit selective on these as well. So now here I have one that I do plan to save. This is, I don't know what this is. Oh, number 4. So I think in this area here, because I wasn't sure, I think, what letter I was on, so I just started using numbers here. So let's see what we have here. This is the Figaro mix. Oh, beautiful. It's funny because this tiny little dwarf one, the tubers are actually the same size as I think one of the larger 6-foot guys that I pulled up. So here we have this one. I think there's only one more in this section, which is that one over there. So I'm just going to do it from this side here. There's quite a bit of soil attached to here, but I'm not taking every last bit of it out. I'm just taking the majority of it off when it's big clumps of soil. But otherwise, I'm leaving it as is. So here are the tubers that I collected. And now for my super easy storage method. And it all starts with this, just a plain old bucket. And I just reuse these. I think, oh, you know what? I got this from the grocery store. Sometimes they have buckets, especially in the bakery section, for things like this was, buttercream frosting or something. And every once in a while, if I see they have a pile of buckets, I'll say, hey, can you spare 1 or 2 buckets? And they are more than happy to give them away. So that's what this bucket is from. And I used to use peat moss, but then I saw Aaron, who everyone knows is the impatient gardener, using this animal bedding. It's natural pine animal bedding. It's the kind of stuff used for rabbits, gerbils, things like that. And I've been using it for a couple of years and I really like it. It works really well. So my super easy, lazy way of storing these, I usually have a few buckets that I have to do, but let's get this bucket done here. So first, I'll take some of the bedding. This is not moistened or anything like that. And I put maybe about 1 inch or so on the bottom. Okay, so like that. Then I just start taking my tubers and I sort of put them kind of in layers. So I can fit about 3 there. So now I'll just start adding more bedding on top of that. And you notice I didn't wash the tubers off. I didn't do anything. The soil is still on there, the soil that is moist.
Let me interrupt the video here as I didn't really explain why I'm not curing the tubers. Now, the vast majority of instructions on storing tubers indicate that you should dry them out or cure them for a day or so before you put them into storage. And this helps to prevent rotting and mold. But my biggest issue in the past has always been that the tubers would actually tend to dry out and shrivel up because it's quite dry here over the winter. Now, you're supposed to dampen the mixture you're using if you're using peat moss or the wood shavings like I am, or sand, or however you're storing them. But I was never quite sure how much water to add. Was it a little too much? Was it not enough? I don't know. It was sort of a guessing game. But then one day I thought, well, you know what? If I lived in a warmer zone, like zone 8, 9, something like that, I could just leave the tubers in the ground and they would be just fine. They're not dried, they're not cured, they just kind of sit in the ground in the soil and then they come up the following year. So that's when I decided to try this method out. So I just pull the tubers from the soil with the soil attached to it. And at this time of year, the soil is usually really quite moist. And then I surround it with wood chips, and wood chips are quite dry. So I figured they would soak up any excess moisture and then they would slowly release it over the winter as needed. And this has worked out really well. Now, there are dozens of different methods of storing tubers because everyone has different storage conditions, and it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all sort of thing. So my goal here is not necessarily to say this is what you should do, but it's to throw another option out there for you to try, especially if you have had issues like me with tubers that just simply dry out over the winter.
So I've basically covered these guys. There's still a bits showing, but that's fine. And then I'll add a few more. This guy I think I'm going to put upside down because that little bit's sticking up. Maybe this one here. And add a bit. And this actually just perfectly fits the ones that I have here. And I top everything off so that it is completely covered. There are no bits sticking out, probably about an inch or so on top of the last row of tubers in there, like that. Now, just to make sure that they do not dry out, I spray the very top of this bucket just with a small amount of water. I'm talking like maybe 10 sprays with a water bottle, something like this. Like that. And that's it. And then what I do is I grab a bag and I kind of mold it, I guess, to the top here, like this. It's not airtight by any means. There's lots of gaps and things like that. It can absolutely still breathe. And I know you're thinking, it's a plastic bucket, you have a plastic bag on the top, you know, those tubers are not going to be able to breathe. But I tell you, I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and it has worked out really well, surprisingly well. One time what I did is I did use the bucket. I used peat moss. I moistened the peat moss. I believe that's the year also I rinsed off the tubers. And what ended up happening is the tubers did end up drying out. So of course it also depends on where you put them for storage. I put them in the cold cellar, and our cold cellar stays just above freezing all winter long, so in the 4-degree range or so. And that's basically about it. So we are good to go. I'm going to bring this down into the cold cellar, and then I'm going to start digging up the rest of my bulbs. There are a lot of bulbs that are still in the ground that I actually planted as bulbs. I haven't dug anything up yet. In fact, there is a ton of stuff left to do. We went on holidays. It was my husband's kind of milestone birthday, and so we went away. And when we went away, the temperature was still pretty good, sort of like today, you know, 10, 11, 12 degrees, like a little bit higher, but not much. When we came back, it was literally just above freezing every single day. But we are having a few good days coming up. So I'm really hoping to get out here and wrap everything up, because I really don't like being out here if I have to wear winter coats, winter gloves, and all that kind of business, especially to do work. I don't mind walking around the garden like that, but I don't want to be doing work when it's that cold. Anyhow, thank you so much for joining me today, and we will see you next time. Bye.